Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first Yesterworld podcast. I'm very excited to finally be doing this. Been talking about it for months. And to join me today for the first podcast, we have the one and only Disney Dan.
Hello, Mark. How are you, sir?
Doing good. How about yourself?
Good, I guess. Do you often say that it's Mark from Yesterworld in your videos? I can't recall now. I know, like on Twitter, and you're not like you don't hide your name, and like in the
I don't.
descriptions, you don't hide your name. But do you ever
I,
like?
I don't think I ever. I mean, on Twitter, like I'll
Yeah, I know that
say.
I see you sign descriptions and like notes sometimes and like comments with like Mark/Yesterworld.
No, I
But
started
yeah,
doing that because I think I told you for so long people assumed Yesterworld was like a company or a group because
uh,
the name
gotcha.
entertainment. So it always be like, oh, they do such great work, they do this and they do that, and some people saying, why can't there be more videos if it's a group of people? So I'm trying to get across more now the, you know, one man band kind of thing rather than
Yeah.
have it seem like, in hindsight, I was thinking like, I don't know, maybe I would have done like my name and then maybe a fake name, and then have I don't know. Well, you're Disney Dan, so I guess people
No, there's no
assume.
hiding. There's no hiding for me.
But in your videos, you usually say we or us. Do you do that to make it sound like there's more of you, or just to be more
Do
inclusive
I
with the
say like
audience?
we and us? Well, I do have a lot of people help me with stuff.
Mm,
I have someone in Disneyland. I have someone in Disney World. Help me record stuff and do voiceover and help me like
that's true.
and edit my script. I have it's a one man band just like you, but there's plenty of people who help.
Oh, okay. I get what you're
And are
saying.
participants. So I don't know. It's a
Right.
collective we though. When I say that, I mean all of us as Disney theme park fans and theme park fans in general. It's a collective we. But so tell me, what is your plan with this podcast? What is it that you want to do? And what kind of information are you going to bring your fans from this new endeavor?
Well, I think the goal, like I'd always had doing a podcast in the back of my head. Everyone seems to have one, but it kind of came from, my videos take a lot longer than the average content creator, I think, to get out. And I was trying to think of ways to, without sacrificing quality over quantity, a way to get something out at least once a week or at the very least every other week. And with a podcast, I can fill in that aspect. But then also, it gives me a chance to expand upon my content, expand upon the videos I put out, because there's always so much that you cut or you can't talk about. Or I try to keep my videos very objective, and I guess you could say more or less journalistic, where I don't insert my opinion much. I try to keep it very fair as much as I can, even though I always, give a dig to Michael Eisner and stuff. But I try
Yeah,
to, yeah. I mean, you can't, you have to. You can't avoid that. Every story, I swear, every story I ever look at, somewhere in it, it's like, oh, Michael Eisner, this, and very rarely it's positive. Sometimes it is, but other than that, like I try to keep them objective. So I thought this way, it's a way to expand upon the subject, but also, like maybe more give my opinion on certain things.
yeah,
Um,
and it's you do so much research in these videos, and I'm in the same boat as you. And then you put the video out, and you realize, oh, they just they this article just came out. The minute I hit publish, that has this little bit of information that I really wish I could have shared, or I just found this, or turns out I said this wrong, or that someone
right.
pointed this out in the comments. And so this is like it's kind of actually a really great idea as a nice follow up to your video, to your core
Right.
videos, to say, here's a little, I'll read through the comments of the video, see what people said. I'll read through the social. I'll ask everybody if they've got any questions, and just kind of do like a follow up, you know, uh, uh, like those specials after you watch like an episode of something on HBO, where it's like, and now a 10-minute talk back with the director about this episode.
Yeah, like The Walking Dead, that I think it was the Talking Dead, and they would expand or have any of the people that were killed off, like come and share their
Yeah.
experience. But I mean, yeah, and the last part was your idea that you brought to me a couple weeks or a month ago or so as kind of like an additional, and I hadn't thought of that because there are so many times where, like you said, you put out a video and then you find that one article, maybe it doesn't necessarily like mean that what you said was wrong, but maybe adds to it, or talk about something maybe that you overlooked that someone brings to your attention that says, "Oh, why didn't you talk about this?" And a lot of times there's a reason why. I don't want it to meander too much, or um, pacing and narrative and all that stuff. Like I remember one video, like normal. I mean, you know me, I go nuts about trying to make everything accurate and perfect. But there was one where I got it so wrong. I think it was like Walt Disney's the year that he died. And like I usually don't take down a video like once I've uploaded it, but that one I was like, no, I can't. I can't like have that. That's that and one other one that I took down because I used even though I was using it within the context of how the scene and the attraction was described at the time, and I was trying to remain faithful to how it was described at the time. It was a really good it was a good lesson for me to learn in terms of how these things go when you upload something on the internet. It was in the Thunder Mesa, and it's I guess it's the other word for Native American, and I said it because that's how the articles described it, and in the original proposals. And I thought, oh, it's the context of it. I can keep it. But the second, like within a minute of uploading it, I had all these comments like, actually, the term is, and it got overwhelming, and I was like, okay, I gotta pull this one
Yeah,
down.
it's difficult when you're presenting, like history and you're
Right,
talking about you don't want to like wash history out and not
right,
talk about, and speaking of controversial stuff, this leads in perfectly to what this episode is about, because
right,
I think that short of Splash Mountains, the IP that Splash Mountain's based on, I can't think of another ride in all of Disney parks that has sparked more controversy and like outrage and arguing back and forth than Pirates of the Caribbean through the years. I mean, like this ride has like changed and evolved so much, and
right.
I love your two videos about the
Oh,
controversies,
thank you.
especially this most recent one where you dive into how they kind
Yeah.
of moviefied the whole ride, which I think is pretty interesting.
And it actually literally ties into Thunder Mesa. I know we talked about this when we were hanging out a couple weeks ago, but for anyone who doesn't, I mentioned it briefly in the Thunder Mesa one, but in a nutshell, Thunder Mesa was going to be this like huge expansion of Magic Kingdom. And you can look at the video or research, it's fascinating. But the reason why Pirates, because Magic Kingdom opened without Pirates of the Caribbean, and the plan was the I think it's the Great, I'm going to butcher it, it's like the Great River Expedition or something
Yep, I
like
believe that's
that.
right. Yep, that
Yeah,
was
and
going to be
that,
the big e-ticket like attraction
right.
over there in
It was going to be,
Frontierland or
yeah,
Thunder
their
Mesa.
version of Pirates of the Caribbean. And it was going to have a lot of the same elements as the Disneyland version. It was going to have, the dropping into, lower levels, and just a lot, at the very end, a long, steep climb up a hill. It was going to have a lot of those. And that's why Magic Kingdom's Pirates of the Caribbean is kind of like the Spark Notes version, because, it's just, they didn't want to repeat themselves. But then, of course, Thunder Mesa and the attractions never came. So then they never had, well, I guess Splash Mountain in a way, they kind of add a lot of the concepts from Thunder Mesa, made it into Splash Mountain, like the thunderstorm at the end, the villains catching up to the log flume. So
Hmm.
it does,
Yeah, I think a lot of
tangent
stuff,
like that.
like a lot of stuff lived on also in Big Thunder. Like a lot of like they pulled a lot of
Oh
the
yeah,
theming. out of that, but it just didn't. And it was a really cool. Your video on it is really great. I encourage,
Oh,
if you're
thanks.
listening to this, you haven't watched it, definitely go watch that, because it was like eye opening to me. I was like, this is incredible. I've never heard about this. That and your Beastly Kingdom, two really great like park expansions that never happened that you cover really really well.
Thanks. Yeah.
But
No, I love those kind. I love unbuilt, unrealized, especially when, because there's a lot of ideas where um, they kind of never leave the drawing board or, concept art. But I mean, Beastly Kingdom, especially, not that's a whole other topic for another video. But man, that one was so close to becoming a reality. So many, elements of Beastly Kingdom made it into, teasing wise, made it into Animal Kingdom and still are there, Um, and yeah, I love those where they get so close because it's so like, it was so close, you know, and
yeah, and it was back before social media. Like, you got to the point where you had all the models and all the artwork, and you
right.
were like literally working on, and it was like inches away from happening. And in today's day and age, like, that would have been all over the web, and it
Oh
would have been
man,
all,
I
but
wonder if there will
back
be a
then,
case like that now.
I'm,
Like,
I'm
can you
sure.
imagine like Star Tours? They're like, oh, here's the concept art, here's the models. No, change. Like if they just, I mean, I don't know
I'm
if you
sure
can
that
recover from
the
that
way
now.
that their PR machine, I don't think that they would ever let anything get out
True.
if it wasn't going to roll. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Barring some kind of catastrophic event. But yeah, so no, but I thought your most recent video with the whole Jack Sparrow kind of like movification of Pirates of the Caribbean was
Right.
interesting, because I remember when it happened, because it
Mm.
was what, like 6, 7, it's, or was it 10 years ago? I can't remember
It's
now.
2006, so almost 12 years
Yeah,
ago.
12 years ago. And so, but I distinctly remember, because it was a year after I graduated high school, and I
Mm.
was down there at the parks, and I remember the ride being closed, which was kind of surreal, because when we were there a couple weeks ago, it was closed for
Right.
the auction scene, and that whole corner of the park just like kind of dies out
Yep.
when the Pirates
Same
is
month.
open.
Yep. Same
Yeah,
month.
was it the same month they closed it down?
Yeah, they closed Pirates down. The announcement came in I just made the video, I should know this. January, I think February. But yeah, they closed it in March, and then ironically or coincidentally, they closed Magic Kingdom in, their version in March. So were you traveling there, or did you live closer there, or were you just
No, no, I
happen
still
to
lived in
like be
Pennsylvania. I
in?
just remember vacationing. I remember
Okay.
vacationing there, or being down there when it was closed, and and then I was back like 6, 7 months later for something else. So I remember like going on the ride, and just being like, uh, because they like repurposed a lot of familiar things, like,
Right.
like the Wicked Wench into, with Barbosa. It was just surreal, and weird to see this incredibly lifelike Jack Sparrow, animatronic, uh, kind of like retrofitted into the
Right.
story, that were plot points that they didn't carry over properly from the ride into the movie, but then we're somehow trying to shoehorn the character from the movie into these ride plot points. It was interesting what they did and how they chose to do it. But I guess we could
Yeah.
just run down
Especially.
point by point, like you do in the video, and just talk about each edition, right?
Yeah, because in the first one I did, that one was about the 1997. I actually got flack in my video for saying PC and not saying oppressive something 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 changes, but the politically correct, the PC changes. That's easier to
Yeah,
say,
all the womanizing kind of stuff that was removed from
right?
it,
Which is
back then.
shocking. Like, and I think I mentioned it in this video. It's shocking to me that they took out took out the lustful pirate, as he was nicknamed, and that whole thing, but they left the bride auction scene 100% intact. The bride auction, but maybe they felt, okay, we can't do too much. But yeah, that I don't remember. I've been going to Disneyland since I was a kid, but I don't really remember the way it was or the changes. So I had to kind of do that, was all from research. Whereas the Jack Sparrow stuff and the movie stuff, that I do remember. Because I loved, like I mentioned it in the video, that cavern with the really creepy voiceover, where he's like, you never know, blah, 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 and then the Dead Men Tell No Tales comes up, and then you hear that, you know, the guy talking about cursed treasure, and there's no music.
Yep.
And then you go and, Blackbeard is, and again, no music. So it's very, you feel like you're there. And
Yeah,
yeah, and then
they made it very cinematic. They made the new
right.
the it was a very cinematic layover in both the casting and the scoring.
It's
But
so loud. Like every time I'm on, I'm like, man, they are blasting. And I like to put it out there. I know there's a lot of people who are like, change is awful. I hate this. I'm very kind of in the middle on things. Like, yeah, I miss the old version. I miss aspects of the old version. And same with any ride. Indiana Jones, I miss the revolving doors. But I do understand, and I try to see it from like a business point of view, after the effect has been on for a while. In hindsight, they didn't realize how much it would cost, how much the maintenance alone on one particular aspect of a ride would cost to keep it operational, or how much of a maintenance headache it is to keep it going. And I know it's a different, effects versus content changes. However, the world we live in now, where um, everything's blogged, everyone has
yeah,
their own podcast blog. So it's like I don't want to say I agree with it or disagree, but I see why they do make these changes.
well, I think one
And
of the
you
craziest
know,
things about your video was that you mentioned that when the movie debuted, people are going to the
right?
theme parks and they're going on the ride, and I never in a million years would have thought that
I
guest
didn't
relations
either.
were receiving a bulk amount of complaints that there was no ride relation to the movie, and like that there was that disconnect. It just blew my mind that of all the changes and all the uproars and all the this and that's about this ride, and the preservation of the ride and how it is, I'm shocked. But I guess maybe these aren't the annual pass holders. These are the tourists and the the not the true believer Disney fans, but the people who come from all over the world, after seeing this big movie,
Right,
that's like a blockbuster. It blew. That was one of the most shocking things about your video to me, was that, you know,
right.
let's not even think about all the other alterations they made for whatever PC reasons. This alteration was made because guests are like, well, where's Jack Sparrow? He's my favorite character from my favorite movie. And I know you can meet him out front with that crazy cast member who dresses like him, but why
Yeah.
is he in the ride? And that just blew my mind.
Yeah, I think it was, if I were to guess, it was probably, kind of like a 50-50 thing. I would imagine they kind of were playing around with the idea from the beginning once it became, because I remember when Pirates of the Caribbean came out, and I want to say Haunted Mansion came out before that, I think. So I was very skeptical if that's true. I might be making that up, but either way, I was skeptical. I was like, okay, did it come out later or like after, or like I thought it
Haunted
came
Mansion
out
was in
before.
April, and Black Curse, the Black Pearl was July. So Haunted Mansion was first
Okay,
by a few months.
because I do remember I saw Haunted Mansion on opening weekend, but even as a teenager, I enjoyed it for what it was. Now I look at it and it's like, yeesh. But even I was like, oh, it didn't live up to my hopes of what they could do with an attraction-based movie. But yeah, the first Pirates, became a huge, huge hit. Everyone loved it, and I bet the over at Disney they were like, maybe we can make some money, and then combine that with people. I would assume it was people from out of the country, maybe, or like you said, people. I always forget, and I'm sure you do it too, because we are like so obsessed with all the news and all the information that we kind of forget. Oh, there are people that have never been, and they're randomly like, "Hey, let's go family vacation," and they don't know the history. They don't know what it was. They assume, oh, it's got to be a movie based on the ride. it'd be like going on Indiana Jones in a way and having it, nothing to do with the movie, not nothing, but, only be like homages, or homages, however you want to,
Yeah. Yeah.
like if you wrote Indiana Jones and there was no Indiana Jones and it was just, you know, um, like maybe a
Some weird
boulder.
cursed cave.
Yeah. And you go like, well, where's Indiana Jones? I mean, obviously it's different because it came out long after the movies, but I could see how in some people's mind, that's how it would appear. But so I think it was 50-50. I think it was like, oh, we're also getting complaints. People are getting kind of, I guess it's a good enough reason to do it. But I think when I was younger, I didn't care as much. But then when you grow older, I think you get more nostalgic and you're like, oh, for me, it didn't seep in until in my 20s, I guess, more in my mid 20s that like these things are gone, you know, like once they're here, the original version of Pirates, and then when it changes, they're not going to bring it back. In my mind, I was like, oh, maybe they'll switch it out once in a while. Well, of course not. It's not worth the time and money. And now it
Yep.
kind of hits me like, oh, I will never get to experience that version again. Any, family, friends, my nieces or nephews, and that's not, like I said, I'm not saying, oh, it's a terrible thing, but it's a weird thought, like, it's never going to be there again for anyone. And then, same with Back to the Future. Back to the Future, closed it. I forget the order, but when it closed at Orlando and Hollywood, it was in Japan for a long time, I think. And I think it only
Yeah.
recently closed.
Yeah,
So at
just a
least
few years ago.
but anyways, that thought, that idea of like, oh, once it's gone, didn't hit me until later. And now I'm like, oh man, like, I'm glad I have the memory of going on it when it was the original.
Yeah. Yeah, but ultimately, I think that the in terms of corporate synergy, and you know what I mean, like and vertical integration that the huge corporate entities likes to employ.
Right.
I think this was a good use of it. To include. And anything that will give me a little bit of Jeffrey Rush and some voiceover work is perfectly fine with me. So including Barbosa, giving me, and even when they doubled down and added in a Blackbeard into the fog curtain scene.
Oh, yeah.
Because for a while there it was just Davy Jones, and then they rolled in Blackbeard after the fourth movie came out, and I'm kind of patiently waiting for them to roll in, Cruz. I can't remember the name of the bad. Yeah, Salazar. Something like that. Yeah. I'm like, well, they should definitely put him in now. Why not? I mean,
might as well.
Just might as well. Even if they just do some dub voiceover work with a little bit of the CGI, like haunted face thing. They kind of like put it in a way that if this series keeps expanding, they can keep integrating the big magical baddies a little bit here and there, in the fog, and then like the voiceover when you're climbing up the steep incline at the end of the ride, that kind of stuff. But I think it's smart,
and that's where it gets because you have the diehards, and like I said, I'm almost always kind of right in the middle because I'm always trying to look at things objectively. But even I don't want to see everything. I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll change the ending of the Disneyland version and have the pirates from the movies being dueling it out,
but what you have here is something that I think is an acceptable form of as compared to like what they did with Maelstrom. You know what I mean? Like that is a ride where they completely gutted it and turned it from one Norwegian thing into another Norwegian thing that were completely unrelated. With this movie tie-in, you still have the bones of the original, and you can with a little bit of imagination, and if you just close your eyes at certain parts of the ride, or just look at a different, because that's the nice thing about a ride is you can look at whatever direction you want to look. You can still feel the essence and the bones and the core of what the Pirates ride was even before Jack Sparrow was put in, and they did the cinematic,
Right.
redo. You still have your Pirates ride, with a few extra animatronics. Whereas with Maelstrom, you don't have that, you don't have alien encounter anymore. You still kind of
Right.
have the same show setting, some of the same animatronics, but otherwise you don't have alien encounter anymore, and
Yeah, and at least, if you write it, like you said, either by using your imagination, or let's say you take your nephew or your son or daughter, or, or a friend who'd never been, you can still be like, oh man, like, there used to be Blackbeard there, and they can kind of imagine it and be like, oh, this used to have no music, and they can kind of imagine it. Whereas something like, Maelstrom, rest in peace, you, aside from the part where you go, spoilers, backwards, and the track layout, I think is mostly the same. But yeah, there's
yeah,
no
they,
like,
they, they added like 100 feet of track at the opening. Like the first scene is a new piece of track, and then you go up the hill towards the ice castle, and that's once you start going up the hill towards the ice castle, that's when you're in the original track then. In Maelstrom, so I mean they
yeah,
added some, but I mean it's unrecognizable. It's unrecognizable
yeah. I
from.
mean, you can kind of, because like, oh, where I was gonna, I guess it's Elsa, um, sends the ship backwards, and that is where the, I haven't been on it in years, but like the goblin or the creature or whoever it was that sent the
Sent you backward,
three-headed
the
thing, I
three-headed.
think.
Yeah.
So I guess in a way, but it's not like, I'm trying to think, like, oh yeah, and I guess in the very beginning, the ice crystals are kind of reminiscent of um, whatever they had on the ceiling. So there are little tiny ways, but yeah, by and large, like
So
my
yeah, so
my
I mean,
biggest
like
thing
in
was
terms
with
of.
Maelstrom when they took out the part where you go outside. Like I was like, wow, that was so
Yeah.
cool. And then when you were entering the attraction, you see this giant hole in the wall, and you're like, what is that? And then you see a boat come out, and you're just like, holy crap! Like that's so cool. And then I mean, I'm sure there's some reason, but they patched it up, and I'm sure there's some safety reason or something, new codes or safety codes or
Yeah.
something. But
So
yeah, with
if in terms of when Disney jumps into a ride and starts tweaking things, this is the kind of thing that I think is tolerable in my book. And then
right,
what I mean, and you especially and the biggest thing to point to is the fact that Shanghai opened with this incredibly beautiful and incredibly technical and creative and amazing Pirates ride that is nothing like any of the other pirates around the
oh yeah,
world. And they could have very easily have gutted all of the pirates and just put in this new version. You know what I mean? And they didn't.
right,
So
yeah. That I'd love to go on it. I'd love to go on any of the, um, Mystic Manor or the Journey to the Center of the Earth, but by it is a completely, you know, in a way, that's probably what some of the guests were. I mean, obviously, technology wasn't as good back then, but I bet some guests were at the time, um, expecting something like that. For those that didn't know about the attraction, who just knew about the
well,
movie,
I think that they were going to reskin the Wicked Wench to be the Black Pearl, and I believe that they were going to include the zombies in the beginning. Like the kind of like the whole zombie, which they did in Shanghai, which is an incredible effect. That what they did in Shanghai is just absolutely gorgeous. With the Jack Sparrow skeleton turning into the Jack Sparrow animatronic, so freaking
the
cool.
first time I saw that I was like, how did they do that? And I had to rewatch it. And, after like the third or fourth time, I was like, oh, okay, now I see how they pulled that off. But I was like, how did they do that? That was crazy. It's so cool. And you just don't expect it. In a way, I kind of wish I hadn't spoiled myself. So if I had gone on the attraction, I would have seen it in person.
So in terms of what they did, how they did it, why they did it, I've got to say that I think that I think it's a smart move. I really do. I think that it
And it
was a
made sense
cool.
because
It was
you know,
acceptable. Yeah.
they already had more and more movies that, they already knew they were going to make three of them. And it's one of those things. I was sad to see it go. I still am when I go on it. Um, it makes sense. It's hard sometimes. But like you said, at least they haven't, gutted everything. They've left certain scenes alone for the most part. Um, but yeah, it's a very thin line. I think, when that line of when you leave an attraction like as is. I mean, it's not the same scale, but even that grand, I always forget the name, Grand Fiesta tour in Epcot, I think in the
Yep. In
Mexican
Mexico, yep.
Mexico Pavilion.
Where they did the
Um,
Three Caballeros.
yeah, and there's rumors that it's going to turn into Coco. Now, for that, I'm not like some diehard. For me, it's no Maelstrom. It's that when I heard, I was like devastated because I loved Maelstrom the few times I got to go on it. But with the Three Cabreros, um, I'm like, I could see it, and I'm kind of indifferent. I'm actually more on the side of, yeah, I actually kind of want to. I never really ride that one anyways, um, once in a while, but then you have the bigger ones like Pirates, and it was like almost 3 decades before they made any changes. So it's going to be more, kind of hard hitting when they do.
So how do you feel now that this new auction scene has dropped in to the ride? And it's, I think Disneyland in California is the last ride, the last version that's going to be updated. I think April 23rd, they're taking it
Okay,
down. And so, and it'll be down for like a month ish as they refurb a few things and of course change it all out. And then of course, the bride auction will be gone off the face of the earth. And
that's a
so,
weird thing to think about too. Just that, and because it is such a love it or hate it, right or wrong, it's a very iconic scene. I
it's
mean,
an incredible iconic scene. I
yeah,
mean,
I
the
mean,
redhead.
merchandise, T-shirts,
I
posters.
mean, my
We
God,
want,
the redhead has been. She's been an iconic piece of merchandising and collectible kind
right,
of for decades. I mean, people have always loved the redhead. It's
right.
been a big thing. And then what really bothers me is that Disney's like, yeah, we're going to get rid of the redhead. And everyone's like hashtag we want the redhead, and so they of course they capitalize on
Oh yeah,
their
yep.
own like horrible horrible betrayal to their fans by selling T-shirts then that say we want the redhead. You know what I mean?
I know there's
uh,
got to be a word for that where everyone's like, no, how dare you? We wants the redhead, and they're going, hmm, we can make some money off this on
yeah,
people's
I think it's called
misery.
Schadenfreude is what it's called. Taking pleasure in other
I
people's
hadn't
pain.
thought of that, but that is pretty funny, yeah. Because whenever you go through the merchandise shop, now you see mugs and shirts and
The
some
redhead,
stuff,
the
and you can
redhead, the redhead. Remember that
technically,
redhead?
yeah,
We'll take a piece of her home by buying this.
yep, yeah. That's
But
that's funny. It's like,
as we've talked about this before, that as from a business perspective,
right,
I understand why Disney would do it, because
yeah,
Disney wants to be the safe space. They
right,
want they don't want to scare you too much. Alien Counter's gone. They
yeah,
don't want to offend you too much because now the bride auction's gone, and the women are chasing the pirates with brooms. You know what I mean? Like they're a constant battle with themselves to make sure that everything they do is as PC and family friendly as possible. So
Well,
I
and I wonder when
understand
Mr.
that.
Toad, like Toad, still has the hell scene, and so I always
Yeah,
wonder like when that's gonna. I mean, I don't. I know it's more cartoony, so maybe that's why. But I
yeah,
wonder.
and I
And there's
think that
alcohols and or alcohols. There's
yeah,
beers
I
and there's
think
cigars and you
that
know
I think that ride, and like it gets a pass for being the OG kind of
mm,
ride. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think anyone in Disneyland, no one's touching Fantasyland ever. Those rides aren't going anywhere. You know what I mean? They
right.
just they're like a piece they're like a museum at this point. You know what I mean? Like,
I think they'll either get rid of it entirely, like they did in Magic Kingdom. I mean, they got rid of Snow White, and
yeah, but
Pinocchio.
Snow White
You know,
and they weren't the originals. You know what I mean? They were just reproductions,
right?
and so who
True.
cares? You know what I mean? Like, they weren't the ones. Those they weren't the rides that Walt himself planned
Right.
and made real.
True.
So there's lots to Disneyland that I don't think will ever be touched in terms of that kind of stuff. But you were very kind to me, and I think we should do this more often, where you go get really fun B-roll for your videos, and then you just give me the leftovers, and I'll put it on my channel and advertise your videos. But you were very kind to me to share with me some of the B-roll you got of the new auction scene. And when I posted that,
I film so much B-roll. I try to do as much as I can, being in Orlando, of the Orlando parks. But yeah, I usually I'll film 10 minutes of something
you end up
just
with
to
so
use
much
like
stuff.
3 seconds. So it's like I might as well do something with it,
Yeah, you're lucky to have that convenience. But when I put up that video clip, that 3-minute clip that you very tastefully edited together after I very untastefully edited it, and you're like, no. Let me do this.
Allow me to.
The comments were a really mixed bag of people who were upset, people who were understanding, people who are like, yeah, I like this, people who are like, but there were a few comments that really opened my eyes a little bit. This one woman commented and said, when I was a little girl and I rode this ride, this scene always scared me because when I grew up, would men take me and try to sell me? Yeah. And when you hear those things, you realize why Disney's like, yeah, we should change this. You know what I mean?
But in a way, I totally see that. But and then on the devil's advocate side, it's a good teaching moment for a parent. Like, mommy, no, this is how things used to be. And yeah, things were not squeaky clean back then. But now we have. I know it's a can of worms, but
I know that the Pirates ride itself was but I mean, I guess not so more, but was, now that this auction scene is finally gone, it was very rapey in terms of men taking advantage of women.
Right.
And one thing that I don't see anybody talking about when they talk about this auction scene is the fact that there was a little bit of peeping Tom kind of stuff in the movie, but otherwise all of the womanizing kind of oppressive sexualization of the rape and pillaging aspect of it in the movies. They did a lot of pillaging, but there was no implication of the raping. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the women, and no, I don't hear anyone complain about that in the movies, but in the ride, suddenly it needs to be preserved because it's the ride. You know what I mean? But if you look at the films, like that first movie, there are tons of scenes where it could have been heavily implied that the pirates were being abusive. Even from down to when Elizabeth claims parlay and she's there in her half-dressed gown.
Yeah.
And the pirates drag her off to the ship. There's no sexual aggression that's implied in the movies at all. Other than that one scene where they peep on her when she's getting changed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the only, but I don't see anyone complaining about that. But suddenly, and everyone's okay with that movie, but suddenly they try to clean up the ride to make it more acceptable for Disney's image, and it's the worst thing ever, And
I think kind of in a way what you said with Pinocchio, I think part of it was because it was one of or the last rides that Walt Disney personally oversaw the development and was super very passionate about. And with Mark Davis working on it and creating all the designs, I think that's a big part of it too. That everything he touched cannot be changed. But you're right, because if you look at the concept art, it was even worse. When you look at some of the images that they had as inspiration, and you're just
the idea that Walt Disney, this was his vision, and this is something that if he was alive would never allow this to change, I think is complete nonsense. And the best example of, and I only came upon this because of my recent Evolution of Peter Pan video. And I want to make a little mini episode about the development of Peter Pan, the animated classic, because there's a really great story behind it. But when they initially got the rights, it took Walt like 4 or 5 years to get the rights to make the animated Peter Pan. And they went through many, many adaptions of the story many of which were incredibly dark. Like, Peter Pan in one of the original scripts, like, flies in to the Darling's house and kidnaps Wendy to be the mother to all the lost boys. And there's like this whole, like, like tying her up and stealing her away and kidnapping her in like a violent kidnapping scene. That Walt eventually is like, no, we can't do this. We've got to,
Right.
we can't do this. You know what I mean? And they turned in and the original intent that they had and the vision, after some time, they saw the error of their ways and moved on to something more acceptable for families. So I can't say that, as culture evolved, that Walt wouldn't be someone who said, you know what, no, this isn't what I want to imply to families who are coming to the park. I don't want to leave them feeling this way or thinking this way. So it bothers me that people are like, oh no, Walt worked on this and it can't be touched because it's the last thing he worked on. It's like, well, no, there's some good examples of him dealing with some unfamily friendly stuff and putting the kibosh on it and saying, no, we got to make this better. Let's be better.
Yeah, because especially when you look at, the pre-1997 version, even more so, like the dialogue from I forget his actual name, but what they call it, the Lustful Pirate. His dialogue is so, and again, yes, historically accurate, but it's very, like, yikes. Like when you actually, if you actually find like his original audio, not everyone would have heard it, because it's on I don't know how many phrases he has, but some of it's just like something about like, that he was willing to share her with the other pirates, and he has her undergarments and she's hiding, presumably, not clothed in a barrel. Like for the first controversies of the Caribbean, like I said, I know I went on it, but I didn't remember it. And even I was like, oh man,
that original video was very eye opening in terms of like, where the ride left off, and where it is now.
To me, the only thing that personally bothered me in the original auction scene, and I'm not saying like in a way of like, oh, I thought they should get rid of it, but just in a way that it just made me always think like, oh man, that's just it gives me a kind of a weird, sad, and maybe you're supposed to feel that way, I guess. But in the auction scene, in the the line of women, number one, they're tied up, which is kind of like, that's one thing on its own. But it was the one that was crying. She was, crying into this handkerchief, and the woman behind her, like, has her, arm over her shoulder, like, oh, there. And when you think about it, that, in terms of, Disney image, entertainment, that's pretty hard stuff to, for a family ride. The other stuff, it's kind of like,
it's slavery. It's what it is. You know what I mean? And, there's very strong imagery to when slaves were being auctioned off and people were being separated from their loved ones. It's a rough, I understand that it's real and that kind of stuff happened. I get that, but it's rough for a park filled with little girls with Mickey Mouse ears on that are covered in pink jewels with glitter in their hair because they just came from the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique. You know what I mean? Like it's hard I can see that it's hard. It could be hard for families. And
especially now because, not that it wasn't always family friendly, but, Disney, Disneyland, well, because of, just because of the time, had edge to it, or I don't know if edge is the right word, but it wasn't quite as like, you know what I mean? Like it's always been clean. It's always been family, but now it's even more with like what you said, the merchandise aspect, the dressing up aspect, the parades, it's even more about
it's very family.
And not that it wasn't, but it's almost, I don't know, I'm spacing on the right way to phrase it. It's always been family, but now even more, it's like,
well, the idea of family has also changed. Like back in the maybe 10, well, when Michael Eisner was in charge, the idea was the family would show up and the teens would go off and do this, and
Mm-hmm.
mom would take the girls off and do
Yeah.
this, and dad would go and wander off and check out this. You know what I mean? Like there was that kind of like a little bit of, but now it's like now families are family units, and they travel together and they do everything together, and
Well, look at Alien Encounter. That's a perfect example of, again, whole other video, but just like, and you went on it. Like I didn't. I was there. I think one of the last few years. It was maybe the last year, and I didn't go on it. My dad did, but I was way too scared. I was like 12 or 13. But yeah, I mean, I asked you when you were down visiting. I was like, "Is it really?" Because I've heard some people say like, "Nah, it was overblown. It wasn't that bad." But you were saying the opposite. That it was.
No, it was, as a young kid, it was rough. I mean, it was a very like it was a totally different experience than the rest of the.
How old were you when you went on it?
I don't know. I have to. I was definitely in middle school, elementary school. I mean, it was not too long after it opened. I remember the queue was packed, the ride was packed, everyone was talking about it. I remember it being a big thing. So,
and the funny thing is, Eisner had wanted to do that. It was going to be directly based off the Alien movies, and every time he tried to push it, the Imagineers and the higher up people were just like, no, like, no, we can't have this in a Disney theme. So even then, like, can you imagine a ride like Alien Encounter coming out now?
It would fit in perfectly in Universal.
Oh yeah,
that kind of concept. But yeah,
and
no,
I think that's what Universal. There's more to it, but when they were starting with the tour and stuff, that was kind of not their goal, but that was their thing. Like, hey, we can be edgy, because they obviously have a harder time getting away with it, And I mean, look at the new Kong ride. They have scare actors in there and people lunging at you. And the weird thing is, like, I feel like whenever a family visits Orlando, they usually do both. Like families, like little kids. You see little kids on The Mummy. You see little kids on, not that they have anything on par with Alien Encounter, but it's like, even though they're edgier, they still have the same demographic. Like I've never once, and maybe I haven't heard from enough people, but I've never once heard anyone say, "Oh, we won't go to Universal. It's not it's not child friendly enough." Like you would never hear that. Like you said, I think for a time Eisner wanted to make it more of the, okay, you go off with, your mom and you do this, and then I'm going to take, the boys and we're going to do Alien Encounter. Like he almost kind of wanted to make it that way. I mean, you have like Star Tours, which obviously anyone can enjoy, but, I think he wanted to probably make it even more edgier to get even more, because the whole goal of when he got hired, he realized that teenagers were not, they weren't wanting to, it was all families. It wasn't like, nowadays with annual pass holders, there's more teenagers in the parks than families sometimes, the group events and stuff. But back then it was like only families for the most part, from what I've, heard from different people, especially Disneyland. And he really did want to edge it up. And Alien Encounter, he tried, and it maybe would have done better in Disneyland, because they already had Star Tours. They already had Indiana Jones, which Indiana Jones is, especially back when it was more intense. Like it can be a pretty creepy attraction, like, with everything that goes on in it, and the skeletons and the Eye of Mara and the whole idea of, having something that'll kill you if you look at it the wrong way, or if you look in the eyes of Mara. Like that's a pretty, like edgy attraction as well. But they chose to put Alien Encounter in Magic Kingdom, and at that point, I don't think they had anything, that wasn't like Disney,
And I think that circles back around to where we're at now with the auction scene, and where that line is drawn. I think it's pretty clear, and I can't think of much more. I can't think of other rides that would need to be altered, you know what I mean, and changed. Right. But I think that you're seeing the last bits of that 50s and 60s womanizing it's
Right.
okay. They're just ladies. Who cares? Getting swept up and cleaned up a little bit, and being put in its place, and
Yeah.
and now here we are, and now the park is more friendlier. It's more open and widely accepted, and uh, I think it's fine. I don't think it's the end of the world. I really don't. And the original has been preserved throughout time now
Hmm.
online and on video and everywhere. And so you'll be hard pressed to not be able to experience it again, at least visually. And as a people we grow, and
Yeah.
I think that's that. There's not much else to say about it.
I'd be curious though, and I'm sure I can research it. If you were to have, obviously, we know now there are people on both sides of the issue um, in terms of the changes to the Pirates of the Caribbean. No, it's not offensive. Yes, it is offensive. Historical accuracy versus like what we talked about, providing entertainment for the entire family. So it's a big debate. But I'd be curious to know when it started even becoming an issue because obviously the 50s and 60s was a very very different, very sexist and misogynistic time. I mean, you look at the advertising back then, and the way women were portrayed in the media. And I don't want to get too into it because I don't want to I don't want to oversimplify it or try to tie women's rights to Pirates of the Caribbean, But in terms of this topic, when it started to become a problem, if you were to survey guests in the 50s and then in the 60s and then in the 70s and then in the 80s, when it started to become more than, oh, it's historically accurate, so I'm totally fine with it, to where in the 90s it started to become, hey, this is a family theme park. Why are you portraying women being sold? You know, and I'm not going to pretend to know, like, maybe it was 5 complaints a year, maybe it was 100. I have no idea. All I know is in the 90s is when, from what I've read, it they started becoming more concerned, which is why in '97 they made the first alterations. Again, way more complicated of an issue of how things were during the 50s and 60s and 70s and even today. But when the problems really started to become, when guests really legitimately started to have an issue with the ride versus maybe in the first few years it opened, maybe no one would have said I had an issue with it, or I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that makes sense.
And I suppose as to 30-something-year-old white guys, we might not be the best ones to to, to postulate
Right.
on those things, but it's enough to say that I think the right choice was made, and I think that in a few years down the line, people will be less indifferent to it, and you know what? It's a beautiful animatronic. Some really cool little bits and fun gags in there. Check out our 2 videos on it. To kind of get the full experience. And I think it's fine. I really do. I think that it's not
It's a
it's not
very
the end of the
well done
world.
anime. Like I said I think I tweeted out, like, I was very nervous. Or not. I mean, I wasn't like biting my nails, but in terms of, like, oh, is it going to be like a really cheap and lazy kind of like, oh, throw some new clothes on her, you know, the dialogue, I can see why a lot of people are upset, replacing the original actors and whatnot. But in terms of like the effort that was put into it, I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, okay, this wasn't just a quick fix. It was a very well done animatronic. There are some funny gags in it. And they kept a little bit of the edge. They could have easily been like, nope, we're not going to talk about rum. We're not going to talk about, anything. But they at least kept that. They at least kept, when she's like, um, it's the rum they want, and the guys are just like, yeah, give us the rum. That I was kind of surprised. I was like, all right, Disney still has a little bit of, edge. They didn't get rid of it completely.
Yeah, They could have changed a lot, and I think, well, certain tolerances, who knows, maybe in 20 years when alcohol is like really looked down upon or something, I don't know. But in the moment, I think that Disney's just fine playing with those things because they're so prevalent in modern culture. Wasn't really not too big of a deal.
Well, I guess we should probably wrap this up. I think we've kind
Yeah,
of
people are probably tired of listening to us.
yeah. I think we pretty much covered it. Would love to hear anyone's thoughts or opinions about the change, how you feel about the change, whether you're indifferent, whether you're out, whether you're livid, whether you completely agree. I'd love to, and I'm sure you would too. Hear what you guys, what do you all have to say? What all of you really think, and your opinions and your thoughts, and even how it used to be versus how it is now.
Yeah. We read the comments. Trust me. So by all means, say hello, drop some comments, share us your stories, what you think of the pirate ride, because I'm interested, because I think it's fine, and don't be too moody.
I love how you have that stance, because there's such a wide, it's such a like, black and white, and you're just kind of like, it's fine. And that's hard, because I was talking to someone the other day and they were very upset. Like they didn't even want to go on it. Like, not ever again, but like, I don't even want to go on it. And then you have you're so optimistic anyways, but you're just like, it's fine. You're such a hardcore Disney person, and you're okay with it. And it's a good thing to have.
Yeah. Like, let's be a little more worried about other things than this. Especially all you vocal white male middle-aged guys who perfectly understand the terrible things that women have to go through in their everyday life, for you to pass judgment on the fact that they don't necessarily want to see a representation of women being auctioned off to men. Like, let's find some other things to worry about that might be more important.
Yeah, and I think that's where the debate will always be for any attraction, for any form of media. Preserving history. It's not a history museum. I think a lot of people look at it as, if you go to a history museum, you're going to expect to see those kind of displays. But the parks aren't a history museum, and I know it's not nearly as a dry cut issue that oh, it's not a museum, so that means we should change everything. Oh, there's historical significance. There's so many different aspects to it, but I think it's a good thing to keep in mind when they make changes. I think it's a good opportunity for us to all kind of like question that, where that line should be drawn.
Yeah, I agree.
That's pretty much it. Well,
that's all you can say.
Yeah. Well, thank you to everyone who's stuck around for listening to us go back and forth about such an iconic attraction. However you feel about it, hopefully you took something away from this, and I have from some of the things you said that I hadn't thought of certain perspectives. And I want to do more of these. So in addition to your thoughts about the ride, I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions about anything. Just let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Hope to do more of these. Thank you so much for coming on, Dan. I love talking theme parks with you, or really anything, movies, theme parks, whatever.
It's always a pleasure to chat with you too, Mark.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So, anyone go check out his content. He makes amazing videos. His recent video, you can plug yourself, plug the video, because it's a really fascinating.
Are we talking about Peter Pan?
Yeah.
The evolution of Peter Pan was really one of the most complicated, drawn out things I've ever had to research, because there's just so many versions of. I can't believe how many versions of Peter Pan, well over 30, that have appeared in and out of parks and shows and stuff like that. Official Disney Peter Pans. It's crazy to me. But
and you had to cut it down. You had to cut it down. Like, I remember.
Yeah, I had to cut a lot of them out. Yeah, I think like the final version only had like 26 Peters.
Yeah.
Different variants of Peter Pan. And then, of course, a week after I published the video, a new one was revealed in Paris. So
But that's what
But I,
this is for. That, like, going
yeah,
back to the
that's what
beginning, because
this.
that's always going to happen, whether it's movies, TV, anything. But yeah, I mean, everyone check out his channel, check out his videos, check out that video in particular. Um, I'm looking forward, and I won't say it in case you want to keep it a surprise, but I'm looking forward to your next one. Uh, I'm very curious to see what you'll do with it.
Oh
Is
yeah, I'm
there
excited
when
too.
can do you have any kind of rough estimate of when your next evolution will come out?
Um, I'm currently working on a fun video for April 1st at the moment.
Hmm.
So and it's kind of taken over my production time this week, but I think I can get them both done by the weekend. I'm not sure. We'll see. We'll see. But you know, with it, if you're listening to this, whenever you're listening to it, there's always a new distry that'll come out within like a week or two of when the last one did. So I don't. I try to do like one every week and a half or so. So
Right.
but yeah, it's fun. I really enjoy it. And there's so many. I have like a laundry list of topics to cover that I haven't even. It's just so much, you know. And then also, you know, not just evolution, but also just various Disney history that I've never seen people talk about certain things. It's going to be great. I can't wait. I can't wait to keep making content for everybody and having great friends like Mark on
Oh,
YouTube.
appreciate that. And I feel the same way. Look forward to your content. Look forward to future collaborations and everything in between.
We got a fun collaboration coming.
We do, and that's going to be a very. I'm really excited about
I
that
know you're
one.
super excited about that. I immediately saw the gears start like churning as soon as I said it to you. It was great.
Yep, it was a fantastic idea. It was way better than the. Maybe we'll do them all sometime. But again, thanks everyone for watching. Check out Disney Dan's channel and his content, and I'll see you all next time.